All right, welcome to Ask M, episode 28, where you guys ask the questions and I answer. But I have a very special guest coming from the tri-state area.
Tri-state area?
This is WOD Doc, Tim Szymanski.
Yep.
Did I say it right?
Yeah, you did.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yes. What are we going to talk about today, Tim?
So we're going to talk about hip mobility, about the way that I approach hip mobility and how I think that we need to mobilize hips into 3 planes of motion. So a lot of times when we go into, people have tight hips, right?
Yes, for sure.
The sitting postures, the sedentary postures, the computers, right?
Yes.
We basically, we all sit.
The driving.
Yeah, we all sit like
traffic.
so much, right? It's either we're sitting in a car, we're sitting in bed, we come home,
We sit and
sit
watch
at work,
TV.
right? So in any case, what happens is we normally lose a whole bunch of rotation to our hips, and we're either able to do that, we're either able to make up for it with a lot of flexion, or if we lose flexion, we make up for a lot of rotation.
Got it. Cool.
Generally, people are tight in one of those 3 planes of motion, right? So we like to hit all of those and address them and see where we go from there.
Perfect. It's going to be a great episode. Who doesn't have tight hips? I feel like it's just like a chronic problem.
Right, absolutely.
All right, it's going to be good. Ask questions at the end of the video if you want, and then of course follow WOD Doc on Instagram. And where else can they find you? WODdoc.com?
Oh yeah, we got everything. We have Instagram, YouTube, actual the WODdoc.com or WODdoc.com.
Perfect.
I think all of them, right?
We got them all
We even have
covered.
Snapchat, but
Oh, good.
Periscope, maybe.
We should Snapchat this right now.
You want to?
We should. It's going to be a great episode. I'm really excited to have you on.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
So we just met, but I've been following you for quite some time. I love what you're putting out there in the world, keeping people safe and helping especially CrossFitters fine-tune their movements and make them more efficient, which makes them better athletes overall. But also just like in general mobility for even if you're not a CrossFitter. This stuff is great that you're putting out there. So well done.
Well, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Nobody's ever talked really nice to me. Never like.
Aw, you need new friends.
New friends, right? We only met. That's why
We
you're talking
just
nice,
met,
right?
yes.
But
give me a week. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a sports chiropractor by trade. I graduated back in 2009, and then kind of got into the niche of CrossFit pretty early, and little by little started volunteering for CrossFit and did all that stuff, and then found that niche. And I grew up in that time where CrossFit was still very young, so you had all those bad stereotypes, like, they just care about reps and they don't care about their form, and CrossFit hurts everyone, it's a cult, we drink blood
Which
and
I still
sweat.
think is still a stereotype. Don't get me wrong.
It might be.
That is prevalent.
I think it's getting better, though.
It's better, for sure. But I have been outside of my little CrossFit bubble and realized, oh man, we still are scaring a lot of people. So if you are that person that's intimidated by CrossFit, we're going to change your mind.
Absolutely. But what I found out to myself, working and coaching in CrossFit, because I started coaching back in 2009 as well, is that it wasn't that people wanted to get hurt or hurt themselves or anything like that. It was just that it was an education level thing, right? So I thought that if I can supply quality information, that I can help keep people safer.
Yeah.
And that's what it all came down to be. And it's kind of funny because in the gym that I worked at, they called me Doc because I was a chiropractor, right? Or I am a chiropractor. And so I would always be running over and correcting people's forms. So they'd say, "Oh, WOD Doc to the rescue!" So it was a joke, and then it turned into campfire stories, and then this project, right? So
Perfect.
The original goal was to start to do 365 episodes in a row, and then it just turned into 365 as in every day. So
That's
every
awesome.
damn day and all that stuff.
That's awesome. It's a lot of videos, so you'll have a lot of great content for all of my viewers, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go ahead and jump into hip mobility because I know I need it today. I'm a little sore.
So when we start hip mobility, one thing that I see a lot of people do is incorrectly perform that modified pigeon or that box stretch, right? So when we have to look at the difference between the way that yoga invented the
Pigeon.
the modified pigeon, or and it was for the back leg. Versus when we got into the functional fitness community, we put it up on a box, and we were really trying to stretch the back of the hip,
For sure.
right?
So let's show them actually, because I don't know if a lot of people. I have a lot of various viewers. So this is original pigeon. So this is what you're talking about is yoga pigeon.
Right. So the yoga pigeon right here, this was invented, or the idea, the goal, the purpose was to square the hips up on top here. And when you did that, you got a nice extension stretch through the right hip, right?
It's the back leg.
The back leg.
I only feel it on the front leg.
Right. So, but when we started to do it in the functional fitness world, we were concentrating on the left hip, right? And what we wanted to do is to gain external rotation in the hip, or knee out position, while the hip is flexed or the knee is brought up to your stomach. All right. But a lot of people, they can't get into that position. You're still relatively flexible. So we put it up on a box.
Perfect.
So when we put this sucker up on a box, it gives us I'm actually going to make this higher for you.
Okay. I'm tall.
It gives us a little bit of an easier time to get into that position, right? Because we don't have to worry about as much extension of the hip.
Yeah.
But here's what happens incorrectly. Go ahead and just jump into that position. Now we're going to see Emily do the first thing that she's going to do normally to get this leg down is she'll allow this knee to bend past 90 degrees. Okay? Now if you look at the direction of the knee, okay, you can see that the knee kind of points downwards. And what that means is that it's cheating into internal rotation. We're allowing that leg to turn inwards. Versus, and you'll just see how much tighter she gets when you do this. If I pull her leg out and I push her hip over so that we get to about a 90-degree angle.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I'm just going to give you a little push here.
Oh.
Right? You can see how much tighter that gets. Why? Because what we're doing, and the goal of this is to add as much external rotation to the hip as we can while the knee or the hip is in a flexed position. And what she'll do is she'll feel it in this back hip right here. Okay? So what we try to get people to do is you're going to bend this back leg, and it's going to bring you a little bit more upright. That takes off some of that pressure, right? So the mobilization keeps this at 90 degrees, but what we're going to do is we're going to use this back leg to straighten and gather tension in the back of the hip, right? You're going to hold that there for about 5 to 8 seconds.
Okay.
Go through the suffering, right?
Yep.
And then
I thought you were going to say minutes.
No. And then you're going to relax it back down and you take that tension off, okay?
Yeah.
And then you could go ahead and you can oscillate between this, say 8 to 10 seconds on, 8 to 10 seconds off for about 2 minutes, okay? Now, if you get really proficient in this, what you want to do, well, you're not perfectly there yet, but what you want to do is you want to stick your belly button towards your...
Oh, geez. Yeah, I'm not there yet.
Yeah, towards your calf. The difference is that we don't want to crouch. Can I jump in there just real quick? She's not as mobile as I want her to be. So the difference is this. When we get into this position right here, what a lot of people like to do, right, once they're like, oh man, I'm really good here, is they like to go like this, okay? Now if you watch, from your side, you're going to notice that there's no change in hip angle. And remember I said that this stretch is to add external rotation in a hip flexed position, right? Or a flexed hip position. So if I go like this, there's no change. What I want to do is draw my belly button towards my calf. So I want to go here. And now you see that change in hip angle, right?
Cool.
So that's how we would make it harder.
Perfect.
Okay? Now the second one.
Definitely not there yet. That was good. That was really good.
But you can see how much more difficult that is than that typical one that we generally fall into just like this, right?
Yeah, for
and then
sure.
you don't even feel anything back here.
Yeah, or you feel it and you're cheating and you're not really stretching what you could be stretching.
Don't get me wrong, it's a position that you have to work to get into.
Yeah.
And we should allow ourselves to cheat into internal rotation if it allows us to get into the maneuver.
Yeah.
But we should build towards that.
Perfect. I like that. Cool. All right. Yeah. Second move.
Second move is a fire hydrant. It always looks kind of weird because it looks like you're humping a box.
Perfect.
But there's so the inside of the leg is what we call the adductors. Okay. And we kind of just had this little conversation about how it's that groin area. There's a couple of the muscles that go to the top of the knee, like so they don't cross the knee joint, and there's a couple of muscles that go across the knee joint. So we like to get at both of those.
Okay.
So the first one you're going to do looks very normal, right? You're just going to keep your hip on you're just going to stand nice and tall, and you're going to keep your leg nice and straight like this. And then all you're going to do is put your hand like right here on your hip, like you're like mad at the world, right? And you're just going to drive towards like this angle, this way, right? So you do that by exactly doing that little side lunge. But I want to see this chest stay up nice and tall, so that goes down like that, right? And then you could do the same exact thing. You could oscillate in and out. So you hold that pressure for about 8 to 10 seconds.
And then come back down.
And then you come back down. right?
Is it important to pull my toe towards me, or does that matter?
No, for this one, that was a different one that we were doing.
Cool.
For this one, it's more about driving down like that. It's about
But
driving.
keeping that chest.
Yeah. So you don't want to go and move like this, right?
Got it.
Because that takes all that pressure. If you keep your chest upright, it allows it to drive back down. You get down here on the inside of the thigh.
Yeah, and I said this to you earlier, but I have just ridiculously tight adductors. So this is good. Okay.
Right. So we pair this with glute activation, right?
Yes, perfect. Yep.
So the next one, and this is the one that I said looks a little bit more
little
awkward,
humper?
right? The little
Okay.
humper, is what you're gonna do is we have to get the one joint hip flexors now.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, or one joint adductors, excuse me. Generally speaking, the ones that go across two legs, they're tighter, so we never get to the higher ones, right?
Okay.
So you gotta bend the knee, but to bend the knee, you gotta put your knee on your box now.
So knee and foot on the box.
Exactly.
Got it.
So as you drive down, what generally happens here, you can see how Emily's
geez, I
hip
feel it
kind of like, see how you're kind of like in a hip flex position? So you're gonna get down to that position, that tension point, just to gather some tension right here, and then you're gonna drive forward, right? Now, what I want you to do, just because this is gonna be a little bit harder, you're gonna come back just a little bit. So this hand's gonna be on the box.
Okay.
All right, and you're just gonna drive like that.
And come back.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel that like deep in hip flexor.
You can feel it a little bit. If
hip
it
capsule.
gives you that little bit of pinch, just don't lean forward as much.
And it's okay if that pinch is there, right?
It's okay. It's self-modulated,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of us can't. We always think that stretching, we can hurt ourselves.
Yeah.
I've never met somebody that stretched
Overstretched.
like a muscle off their bone, right? It just
Good to
doesn't. We have these protection mechanisms, like these internal
Yeah,
that
that
just
makes
won't let
sense.
us do that.
Because I feel actually like when I go super wide, if I do sumo deadlifts, this is the same kind of pinch that I feel. So
Right.
which makes sense.
Well,
with
because
the
you have some of
adductor.
those bony structures that get close and they encroach some of that tissue. So you will, especially if it's inflamed, especially like if it's irritated, it's kind of like hitting a bruise a little bit.
For sure,
right?
yeah.
So obviously, all these you want to do within moderation,
Yeah.
right? So you could feel a little bit of stretch, you could feel a little bit of pinch, and that's okay.
Just
but
breathe through.
there's a difference between a pinch and a pain, right?
Yeah,
All right.
agreed.
So what this works out really well too is if you have something to hold on to that's even a little bit higher to keep your chest up, right?
Cool. And then show me a few. I'll just watch you as you go through.
So when I do this, what I do is I just drop down in so I get a little bit of that tension. This knee's at 90 degrees.
Okay.
But you can see how my hip gets flexed. So what I like to do is I just like to drive, and I'm almost like
Torquing out.
Yeah, torquing,
Yeah.
like trying to straighten that hip. And when you do that, you feel some right here, but you also are able to get
Right.
those shorter adductors.
Perfect.
Okay.
I love
so
that.
again, 8 seconds in, 8 seconds out for
Okay.
about 2 minutes.
Perfect.
And then the final one is that typical, chair stretch that stretch that we talk about. And this one, the biggest thing that I like to do, I'm going to give you 2 boxes here.
Okay.
Because what happens is we tend to extend our back,
Yeah.
right? So this one is just kind of like for you.
For support.
And you're going to put our knee down now. But you're going to put your leg against this back one right here. Perfect, right? So when we get into this position, I'll put this out just a little bit. What Emily's trying to do here is she's trying to bring her leg back up, her heel back up to her butt, right? So what we want to see happen is we want to see her drive her hip towards this box. But what happens, and what she's starting to do right now just a little bit, is she drives her hip, but then her back starts to arch a lot, okay? And again, that takes out all the pressure in our hip. So what I want you to do first is you're going to come back to where you are. You're going to tighten your tummy like if I was going to punch you in the stomach, right? Yeah, right, like the kung fu tightness, like, right? Once you get that, now I just want you to drive your knee. I don't want any extension to come through your back. You'll probably get like an inch versus like 5 inches,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So when we're able to do that, we're able to support here versus just standing up and getting that hyperextension in the low back. We end up hurting our back instead of helping our hip.
That's perfect.
Right.
And do you find most people, I mean, it should be like an even distribution, but some clients I have, it's like all quad, some it's more hip flexor.
Sure.
If they are feeling just quad, maybe activate glutes a little bit more.
So you could do one of 2 things. If they're feeling more quad, then you're going to try to get. Then you're going to try to bring your butt butt back towards your heel more.
Okay.
That's going to get more quad. If you're trying to get more hip flexor, you're going to try to drive forward
Without
more.
losing that.
Without losing that.
core
Right. So
thickness.
that's why I like that, because naturally, you don't have to have people support too much through here. If you push against the box, right, you're naturally going to contract your abdominals, right?
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
like when you lean back like this. If you ever lean back like this, and I say, "Oh, don't contract your abs."
Yeah.
It's impossible. Like it's like you can't. You naturally do that. So if I engage here, I will naturally make my stomach a little tighter.
Perfect.
And it'll keep my back in a better position.
Yeah.
Same rules,
good.
right? 8
Yep.
seconds in, 8 seconds out.
Perfect.
About 2 minutes.
And just since I have you here and I want to pick your brain, I have quite a few. I actually tore my hip labrum a few years ago, and then my girlfriend tore her hip labrum, and I've had a few emails recently about that same thing. Do you think that's a product of, I feel like it's related to adductors, or do you think it's just a combo of all the stimulus or all the tightness in the hips?
You know,
would there be one stretch specific for that?
For labrums, so you have to understand that labrums are passive tissues.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a couple things that can happen. One is that the hip itself isn't conditioned for the activity that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So the active structures aren't strong enough to support them. And what happens when you beat through the active structures, then the only thing that's left to support it is the passive structures.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, when I see people that hurt their labrums, or in any case, or the passive structures of any tissues, it's because they did something that superseded the active tissues.
Okay.
So I don't think it's necessarily activity driven as it is as condition driven. But also realize you can be the best conditioned athlete in the world and you could still supersede the integrity of those tissues, right?
Yeah.
So if I was a marathon runner, it took me 1,000 miles a week to do that. Versus if I just started running, it might only take me a mile.
Yeah.
But you can overdo, that. And typically that's where we start to see those passive structures get injured.
That makes sense.
As far as stretching, capsular stretches with bands and banded distractions and stuff like that are fun things to do to take some pressure off the joint. We basically, what a labrum does is it's like a little bit of, it holds it in there nice and tight, and it gives it more room, like more surface area to cushion the joint.
Yeah.
So if we can decompress the joint through some of those banded distractions, a lot of times it'll give some relief.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And do you have videos on this that they could find?
Yeah, I have some videos on a bunch of hip stuff. If they just went on, they search hip, and they'll probably get, 50 or so.
Yay, good. And this is WOD Doc from WODdoc.com. Tim, it was a pleasure to have you.
Emily, thank you so much for bringing me on, and I'm so glad we connected.
Yeah, and then, we'll put his information below. If you guys have questions, please use this video. We said this earlier, but there's a reason that these are like the fundamental hip stretches, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the problems that I said to you is coming up with all the episodes, you always want to do something that's almost different, no one had ever seen before. But there's a reason why, the hallmarks are the hallmarks, right? It's because they work. And if you could do the simple ones really well, that's what you need to go to.
Yeah, it's like the foundation.
Exactly,
We got
right?
it. And I was not doing 2 of those right, so that's perfect.
We can always strive to do things like a little bit better. All of us
for sure. It was such a pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you so much again.
Cool. Yay. I'll see you guys next week.